welcome back to another one of these videos. Today we are going to be covering the last kind of special combinations in 14 Minds of Variance. And after this, I might be doing some of these videos, like, I'm thinking about doing like a once a week, like a Mind Super Mondays thing or whatever, but beyond that, I think I'm moving on to other games. So, yeah, I guess you'll see in like a few days what I decide to do from here, but yeah, I just want to let you know that. So, anyway. I'm not going to lie, I'm kind of going to assume for some of these that you have some knowledge of the previous variants, but if not, like, I will still be briefly kind of going over them. So basically, what Connected Duel is we need to have all of our minds being 1x2 dominoes, and all of these dominoes must be connected. They say orthogonally or diagonally connected, but really, since we can never have them in pairs of 2, it's just every pair of 2 must be connected diagonally. So we can go and get into it real quick. First of all, these clues are both just already finished, and by some of the tricks we've talked about in the past, we know that this one must be a mine because there has to be one mine in one of those two, and this 2 needs its last mine over there. So now I guess the next thing we can kind of consider is that this 1-2 pair has only 2 possible combinations. One of them is this, where then, since all 3 of these are now non-mines, we know these 2 must be mines. We can then mark both those, and use to connect up, and this actually, as we can see here, is run us into a contradiction. So that's cool, because we can't have this one here be a mine, since we'll run into a group of 3, which is not allowed by duel, and if this one isn't a mine, then we run into the same problem. So this actually just tells us that that one up there must be a mine, and none of these are mines. Cool. So next thing we can consider is, since all of our mines need to be part of 1x2 blocks, we know that this one can't be a mine. If it were, then there would have to be another mine around this 3, and that would just be too many. Similarly, if this one is a mine, then we know that the block must extend up there. That one's not a mine then, because it's next to the block, but we can see that this area is no longer connected up. So we thus know this one is also not a mine, and there we go. That finishes off this. Okay. So I guess the next thing we can kind of consider for this 3 is that if we put the domino here, then this one is not a mine just because it's next to the domino. If we instead were to put it here, then we also get this one isn't a mine. If it were, it doesn't have a way to extend outwards without hitting this domino and making it too large. So we thus know this one is always not a mine. Unfortunately, it did not look like that was the information this thing actually wanted us to find. I guess something else we can kind of notice is that in this yellow case, first of all, we know neither of these are mines. We then know it needs to extend outwards here because it needs to get connected, so that one's also not a mine. We instead consider the red case. Then we once again both these are not mine, and we also get that this one isn't a mine. So we can see that this one is never a mine either. Interesting. It looks like that one still was not the one it was actually having me look for. That's okay. I guess one other thing we can kind of notice is that we only have a total of 4 more blocks left. I'm not sure if that would be something. In the yellow case, we can see that we need a mine here then. And that one will connect up like this. So then that actually will tell us that this is where the remaining mines must be in the yellow case. Yeah, there we go. So then we can kind of just get rid of these, because now we know it's assumed that we have all of the mines there will be. I guess something we can consider is if it's possible for this one to be a mine in like the red case either, right? Because first of all, then we know it has to either extend up here, in which case it has to go down here, but that blocks it off from ever connecting up, so it can't go that way. Or if it goes down here, then it needs to go horizontally like this, but once again, there's nowhere for it to connect. So I actually think we can then conclude that this one up here is never a mine. Dang. Still looks like that's not actually what I need to find, though. This is kind of unfortunate. This one is, yeah, it's definitely being a bit fun. Okay. I guess something else we can kind of keep considering is if any of these are allowed under red. This one easily is, so we can just go ahead and I guess we'll just put this on there to mark that it can be. I don't know. It's fine. If we instead have this one as a mine, first of all, if it goes downwards, then we can just put a mine there and do it as usual, so that's fine. If it instead extends this direction, then we get there must be mines here and here. And something I'm actually wondering is if the red case isn't allowed because we can't fit enough in there. That's what it's looking like it actually might be. Except, no, okay, I do see a way to. So, like, for instance, this is a way that we could fit in all of our remaining mines in the red case. I wonder if there is any other way, though. Okay, to me it kind of looks like it doesn't, because if we instead assume that this one isn't a mine or whatever, right, then we still have to always have it go this way in order to fit more. And then if it goes downwards, we can then only fit in a block like here, for instance. So we can't fit anywhere else. And if it goes over here instead, we can fit a block going downwards, but we still have to have one there. So I think this should be enough to tell us. And this is kind of hand-wavy idea, but that this one's a mine, this one's a mine, that one's a mine, and lastly, this one is not a mine. Yep, there we go. Cool. Okay. So now I guess the next thing we can kind of also get rid of this, consider, is that now we can see that in the red case there are too many mines around this floor, so we know it has to be the yellow case. Yeah, there we go. So that finishes off this puzzle. As you can see, that was this one was definitely a bit trickier. Like, it required us to kind of go through and construct larger structures. That's just something that in general happens with a lot more of these special variants of puzzles, but yeah. Anyway, we'll now move on to Connected Quad. Connected is the same, quad's just in every 2x2 region there has to be at least one mine. From standard quad logic, we know that both of those have to be mines because it's the only way to fill in both of the squares around the one. And alright, so now we can go ahead and start thinking. First of all, in order for this mine to actually extend outwards and connect up with the rest of them, it has to go through here. And we can also see that in this 2x2 region still exists, so there must be a mine in one of these two squares. That finishes off the 3 mines, so there can't be a mine down there. We then know that both these have to be mines for this group to extend outwards. And we also know this one has to be a mine because it has a 2x2 region with 3 non-mines already. And the last thing we can see is that there will have to be a mine in one of these 2 squares, once again just for this region to kind of head out. And that'll be the 4th mine around this floor, so we know this one is no longer a mine. Cool. Okay. One thing I'm going to consider is if it's possible for this one up here to not be a mine, or in other words for this one to be a mine, because then we know this has to go upwards through here. That finishes off all of those mines, but then we can also see that this one has to go up here, and this group has to go up through one of these 2. That overloads the 4, so we then know this one has to be a mine, that one can't be a mine. Both of these are now mines, so we're cool on that front. And lastly, we can see the last mine in this 4 must be one of these 2 just to fill out this 2x2 grid, so this one cannot be a mine. There we are. Okay. Next thing we can kind of notice, once again, there has to be exactly 1 mine here for the 3. There's 1 mine in each of these 2, thus this one up here must be a mine. You can also see that this one has to now connect up with the rest of them. It can't do it by going down through here because there can only be 1 mine there, so it has to do it by going diagonally through here. There we are. We can also, once again, it has to connect up, so we can put 1 mine there. This 3 is now finished, as is this 4, as is this 4, and there we go. That finishes up the puzzle. Not too shabby. We'll now move on to Connected Triplet. The way triplet works is just that you cannot have a row of 3 mines anywhere, and that includes both orthogonal rows, like something like this, for instance, or diagonal rows, which would be something like this. So there we are. But we also do know that all of our mines still have to be connected, so this one has some interesting ideas to it. Anyway, we can go ahead and get into it. So the first thing I guess we can consider, given that this 2 has a small enough a number of, like, I guess, combinations, we can just try each of those real quick, because that should give us some information. So first of all, given that we have these mines going through here, we know that they have to leave either through, well, I guess actually we know it can't leave through here, right? Because if it does, then use another mine to get out, so we know it can't go up there. That means it has to go down through one of these 2. So we can then mark all of these as non-mines, like such. There we are. Cool. Alright. The next one we can consider is, whoops. Oh my gosh, that was like too close, I think, for me. So these 2 are mines. Once again, this group can't leave through here because that would require 3 mines, so it has to go down here to leave the 2. So then we can once again mark all of these as also being non-mines. There we are. Cool. And the last one is if we have 2 mines like this. This combination is actually impossible, we can see, because this 2 is already finished off, so that closes up this entire region, but we then can't connect them up with any other mines, so we can then mark in all of the common deductions from this and see where that gets us. Alright, so then we can see that in the, well actually, this is something we could just generally deduce about this 3, but in the red case, there has to now be a row of 3 to finish off this 3, so we know it is the yellow case and that this one has to be a mine, because if it weren't, we would run into the same problem. So there we are. I'm going to go ahead and get rid of our marks real quick. We also now have a potential row through here, so we got to cut that off. And from our difference trick, we know this one has to be a mine, this one can't be a mine. There we are. We also know that in triplet in general, there can only ever be 2 mines in one of these groups of 3, just because if there are 3, it'd be a row of 3. So then we know that this one will have at most 2, then we have 3, 4, 5. So we know there has to be a mine down here. Well, actually, we could have also, I guess, gotten that from the difference trick. Given the 3-5 pairing, we know there had to be 2 mines down here and no mine up there. We can then finish off these clues, finish off that. And this is a potential row of 3. This is a potential row of 3. We can mark in both of those. We can also then finish off this 3, finish off that row, and we can also see that in order for this mine to connect up with the rest of them, it has to go through this square. But that then opens us up to a potential row through here as well, so we could finish that off. Alright. And now, I guess the last thing we can kind of consider is just how we're going to connect up this 3's mine, if it's like here, for instance, right? I don't actually know if this is going to be super relevant or not necessarily, but we can go and think about it real quick. So first of all, if the mine is here, then we know it has to connect up with this group. I guess it has to connect up through this square, right? Because if it tries to avoid connecting up, then it has to go around here, but that's going to require too many mines, given we only have 3 left. So we can then mark this one as always being a non-mine, this one's always being a non-mine, and that's all we can get. Now, the next thing we consider is if there's a mine here. Then we get this one's not a mine, this one's not a mine. And, okay. One thing we can then see is if this one's a mine, it can't go up here to connect up, so it'd have to go around here, but it's only got 3 mines left, so this is as far as it can go. Therefore, that one can never be a mine. I think that's what we need. Yes, it is. Okay. So then we can see that in the red case, this would require us to have 2 mines here and here, which is unfortunately going to break our triplet rule. So we know the yellow case has to be true. We can mark in that, fill in both of these to finish off the 5. And that actually is all of the mines we have in the grid, so there we go. Cool. Next one of these is outside quad. This one has the same quad rules as before, but now we instead have outside. That one is kind of interesting, the way it works, but the basic idea is that all non-mines have to be orthogonally connected, and all mines have to be orthogonally connected to the outside. So like we have one region basically of orthogonally connected mines, and then the non-mines have to be able to, you have to be able to get out of the grid with them basically. And we also have quad. So first of all, we can see this is a mine, and one common thing with outside is we can never have this checkerboard pattern, because the basic idea is that for this mine to connect to the outside, it has to cut off this group of non-mines from this non-mine at some point. So we could then safely mark that as also being a mine. We can finish off both of these, and we can also get from quad that this one has to be a mine here, and that has to extend outwards to connect with the rest of them, so there we are. Okay. Next, if this one is a mine, then in order to avoid the checkerboard, we have to have a mine up here. But that leaves us now with this 3 finished with a 2x2 region that has no mines, so we can then conclude that this one is not a mine. There we go. By our difference trick, we know both of those had to be mines. That one is not a mine. Or to finish up this 2x2 region, that has to be a mine. We can also now do that to avoid checkerboarding, so there we go. And, okay. We then know that there has to be a mine in one of these 2, just in order to finish up this 2x2 block, and that will be the last mine around this 2, so neither of these are mines. And one other thing we can notice is that there has to be a mine up here. If there weren't, then the 3 would look like this, but it has a checkerboard again, so there has to be a mine here. Finishes off this 6, this group then has to extend outwards. We're now avoiding checkerboards again, and okay. One thing we can then see is that this group of non-mines has to extend all the way over here, and there has to be a mine here then to avoid the 2x2, and okay. We now, lastly, have 2 mines left. There will be exactly 1 mine here, and there's only 1 open cell left, so that one has to be a mine. That finishes off the 3, finishes off the puzzle. There we go. Cool. That one wasn't too bad. The next one we have is outside triplet, which this one actually has an interesting consequence of it. I'm actually going to try and demonstrate it here. And actually, you know what? Here, we're actually going to go for a larger one because this might be something we can see real quick. So that was outside triplet. We'll just do a 7x7. Nope. We're just going to keep going until we get the pattern I want. We'll see. I might not be able to get it, unfortunately. Come on. We are so close. Nope. Okay. Well, maybe 8x8 will have it more, I'm not sure. The basic idea is that this one actually allows you to guarantee that regardless of what you do, the middle ones, this is fine. We know that the middle ones can never be mines, and this actually kind of comes from a consequence of outside triplet. The basic idea is that all of our groups of connected mines in this must be of size 4 or less, and the basic idea is we can try to construct one of size 5. We'll just go and do that real quick. So first of all, we have a mine here. We then know there has to be another mine that's next to it. We can actually we can do it inside the grid. So right, mine here, mine here. This then tells us that there are not going to be any mines here or here from triplet. And then once again, we can see that no matter where we put the next mine, it's kind of like, this is basically the same as this. It's just rotation, reflection, etc. And this thing does not care about it, right? So then we get all of these can no longer be mines, right? Okay, so now we kind of have a few options here. Specifically, we have 2. One of them is we go down this route, which then gives us non-mines in both of these spots, and as you can see, we would also not be able to have a mine up there, and this kind of finishes off our block. Alternatively, if we instead put a mine here, we can still see all of these ones are non-mines, and that this also finishes off our block. So the idea is that, at largest, any group of these can be of size 4, right? So now, let's consider the center here. If we try to make a group go out there, we know first of all it has to go here or whatever, and then it could try and turn this way, but we can basically see it never has enough actual cells to get to the outside, which is necessary for our outside condition. So we can then safely mark all of these as non-mines. And this actually does enable us to have, theoretically, puzzles that just don't have any starting clues. It's like an achievement in the game, which is kind of cool, but was not lucky enough to find one, unfortunately. Oh well, that kind of stuff happens. So anyway, one thing we can now consider is that there has to be exactly one mine at most down here, right? But also, given that there can only be at most one mine here, there has to be at least a mine in this region. The basic idea I'm getting to is that there will be a mine here, here, and that the last mines for this 2 must be in both of these spots. And the idea is just otherwise we would not have enough mines left. So we can fill in both of those. And, okay. Then something else I guess we can kind of consider is just some of the possibilities where mines are around these 2s. First of all, if there's a mine here, then I don't actually think that stops much. There's a mine here, then we know that the remaining mines have to be in all of these cells, like this, and that this actually will run into a problem now. And the idea is just we have to avoid checkerboard, but then we also have to finish off the 3 and stuff. And I guess actually we don't have to necessarily have a mine out here, but that doesn't really say anything else about our situation. Like, regardless, we still will run into the same problem with this group of 3 mines. This one had to connect out and then hitting this group of 3. So we then know that this one cannot be a mine, so this must be a mine. We can film that real quick. Okay. So now I guess something else we can consider is if this one is a mine, then we have a mine there. I don't know if this really changes much, right? Because we have no mine there, but that's, I think about it, yeah. Okay. Well, I guess, actually, in either case, I'll actually put this thing back on for a second, because it does have something relevant we can say. If this one isn't a mine, then we also know that all 3 of these must be mines, so that one can't be a mine, and this one must be a mine. Basically, that just gives us this one's never a mine, and that this one's always a mine, which is relevant. And do we get anything else from this? Whoops. In this case, we know that this one up here cannot be a mine, but that isn't a lot on its own. I guess we also get this. I don't know. This doesn't seem like a lot, necessarily. That's okay. Maybe then we can instead consider just... Actually, no. Never mind. We just know that this 3 has to be down here, given that we now have it. So then that should fill in all of this information for us. Cool. Okay. Then we can also see from row 3 logic, or triple logic rather, that one can't be a mine. This one up here cannot be a mine. There we go. That's some information. That's good. Okay. So, I guess... Then we can think about some other spots where there can't be mines. Like, for instance, if there's a mine up here, then we get both of these are not filled in, which then fills in all of this stuff, right? Just from the fact that this thing needs to leave. But then this thing also needs to hit the outside, so it has to go over here, but that stops it by triplet, so this one cannot be orthogonally connected to the outside, thus it cannot be a mine. Cool. Okay. I guess something else we can now think of is where the mines around this 4 are, right? Well, I guess we always actually know there's going to have to be at least one mine here from the difference rule, but if there's a mine here, for instance, as opposed to up there, then it still has to go up here, so we just know there's always going to be a mine here. Cool. I guess something else we can kind of do is just consider the 2 possibilities. Well, no, we actually don't have to, right? Because if this one was not a mine, then there had to be a row of 3 up here, which breaks triplet, so we know that this one's always a mine. That allows us to fill in all of this information, and that as well. Nice. I guess something else we could see is that if this one's a mine, then to avoid outside like checkerboard patterns, that one also has to be a mine, which breaks triplet. So I guess we can actually fill in this. Similarly, we could have filled in this to avoid checkerboard a bit ago, and also that. I kind of forgot about that. That's actually probably pretty relevant for this. Then we can get that from 2-3 difference rules. That one's now finished. This thing needs to extend out to the outside with one more mine, so it has to do that here. And then we can fill in both of these. This to avoid checkerboarding. There we go. That one's now finished as well. Next thing we see is since there will be at most 2 mines here, there has to be a mine up here that finishes off the 3. This one has to extend outwards now to finish off the 2 and go outside. And then both these are non-mines. This one's now mine. That's not mine. There we go. That's just kind of finishing off the group. Then we need to finish up this 2. It goes down there, and okay. I guess now the last thing we kind of have to do is just consider filling in the remaining 6 mines. Given that we know there are exactly 7 open cells, we then know that if we find basically a row of 3, we can guarantee that there will be our 1 non-mine in it, and that the remaining ones must be mines, right? So we know there's going to be a non-mine in this area, so then that tells us all of these are mines, right? However, we can also see that there will be a non-mine in this row of 3, so this one has to be a mine. So then we only have 1 mine left. If it's over here, we get a checkerboard pattern. So we know it. This has to be here. There we go. Cool. So yeah, that was some outside triplet. That one's definitely one of the more interesting combinations. Anyway, we're now going to be getting on to our last, variant, or I guess left side variant combination, which is quad triplet. And this one just combines both quad and triplet logic sets. It's not too complex. Okay, so one thing we can immediately notice here is, given that there can only be at most 2 mines over here by triplet, we know that there have to be exactly 2 and no mines over here. Then by quad, we can fill in both of those to finish off the 2. Just given that these 2 regions were both only had 1 open cell in them, it had to have a mine. So there we go. There also has to be a mine up here for this 4. We can fill up that. Same for this 4. And okay, next thing we consider for this 2 is that since there has to be a mine in this region right here to fill in this 2x2 grid, there cannot be a mine down here. Now by triplet logic, we know there will be at most 2 here, so there has to be 1 mine here. That also tells us there has to be a second mine here, right, just in order to finish off this 3, so there cannot be mines in either of these for this 3. And this is a standard quad thing, but for 2s in the center of the grid, we know that basically it has to be of this kind of formation, where it's like 2 of them on opposite orthogonal lines of the 2. It's the only way to hit all of the 4 boxes around it. So there we go. And now, given this 1, we know there has to be at least, or exactly 1 mine in this region, right? So then we get 1, 2, 3, 4 mines. There we go. Now by triplet, we can mark in both of those, and also all of this stuff. Cool. And I guess the next thing we can kind of consider is what to do about this 3 maybe in conjunction with 2. I guess actually first of all, we know that there's going to be, 1 mine here, 1 mine here. Now I know that's the best way to look at it. Okay, so if there's a mine up here, right, then this will not be a mine. And then for this 2, we know there has to be a mine here to fill in the 2x2, so there cannot be a mine here as well. No mine there either, mine there. Then we have 3 of our 4 mines, that works fine. The alternative is if there's a mine here, then we know there's not a mine here, not a mine here, and critically, not a mine here. Basically, it's just telling us there can never be a mine there. Cool. And now we can get rid of this by our difference logic that we've used a lot. We know there have to be exactly 2 mines up here because 3 minus 2 is 1, and we already have a mine down there. That finishes off this 3, which finishes off this 3 and 2, which finishes off that row right there. And lastly, we can put our last mine there. Boom, puzzle finished. Cool. Now we're getting into some variant combinations that will be basically making clues notate multiple things. The first one of these is liar multiple. We can go and get into it. The basic idea behind this is it works the same with multiple, where our colored cells count for 2 mines, and our uncolored ones count for 1, but just basically all of our mine counts are off by 1 in either direction. So here we go. That's telling us that this one here is either a 3 or a 5. It can't actually be a 5 because we don't have enough mines, so we know it has to be a 3. Thus, this one must be a mine. There must be 1 more mine here. Similarly, we can then see that this one doesn't have enough to be 5 either. So it's also 3. We can then mark this as a non-mine. That pushes this one down to also being 3, which tells us this one has to be a mine. And then, given that there's going to be 3 here, this one can be at most 5 now, right? Because it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and it needs to be at least 5. So there we go. That'll finish off all of these clues. And one other thing that we can consider with this is we basically know that the parity of all of these clues is going to be off by 1, basically, right? So we know, for instance, this one is going to be an even number, either 8 or 10. Given that we already have 2 uncolored cells filled in, it's currently even. If we were to put another mine in here, then it would be odd, which is not allowed. So this one is not a mine. And this actually also tells us just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. There we go. Now this one's already at 6. That means it has to go up to 7, and that can only be achieved by filling in one of the non-colored mines, so this one is no longer a mine. There we are, and now, I guess maybe it'll be relevant to mark in this, right? So we're at 2, 4, 5, which then means that in order to get this one to an even number, this must also be a mine. Cool. That tells us now that this 1 is a 2, so this is no longer able to be a mine. And, okay, we can also then see that one of these two has to be a mine, right? And then in order for this 7 to be an even number, one of these two must be a mine, right? So we're at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There we are. And for this 4 to be an odd number, we then know that there cannot be any more mines, right, in uncolored cells, because if there were, then this would now be 1, 2, 3, 4 at most. Regardless, it'll be even. So we know this is not a mine. We also now know that this one has to be a mine for this 4 to be able to hit a 3. And that also tells us, for this 4, we know that we have to have exactly one uncolored mine filled around it to make it odd, right? Because it's either going to be 3 or 5. Either way, this one has to be a mine. So that kind of allows us to finish off that. This 2 clue is already finished. It's already at 3, so that's done. This is finished. This is finished, and okay. This 2 clue is also finished because it's already at 3, which is its maximum, so I can fill in all of those. And now we have 2 mines left, right? Once again, given parity from before, we now know that this 9 is at an even number, that's where it needs to stay, so that's not a mine. There we go. We can fill in the remaining cells, and that is the puzzle. Cool. Liar multiple, I think, is one of my favorite combinations. It's pretty nice. The next one is multiple cross. This one is basically just multiple, but all the clues now trace cross regions. So we can just first of all see this 4 is already finished. Fill in both of those. We are now finished with that. Okay. Next thing we can consider is that this 3 needs to have this cell filled in, otherwise it'll only be a maximum of 2, so there we go. And that tells us then for this 5 that this cannot be a mine, it must be one of these 2 as its last mine. There we go. And, okay, given that there's 1 mine here, we then know the remaining 2 mines for this 3 must be here and here. That also now tells us this 4 just needs 1 more mine from one of these 2, so we then know that this one down here cannot be a mine. There we are. Okay. And I guess the next thing we can also note is with this 2, given that we already have a mine here, one of these 2 must be a mine, so neither of these 2 colored cells can be mines. And lastly, from this 5, we once again won't have enough cells, or rather enough mines around it if we don't make this one a mine, which then tells us there have to be exactly 3 in this region. That means there's at least 1 here, which tells us this 2 is going to be a combination of 2 uncolored cells, so this one cannot be a mine. And we can also mark this one as a non-mine immediately for the 1. And what this now tells us, there's exactly 1 mine in this region of 2. We know there has to be at least 1, but then from the 1, that tells us there's exactly 1. So that gives us that there is a mine here for the 5, and neither of these are mines. Cool. And I guess the next thing we can consider is that we have 2 basically possibilities for this 1. One of them is up here, in which case this one's not a mine, this one is a mine. Then for the 5, this one has to be a mine. The other case is if there's a red one here, then neither of these 2 are mines. And then for the 5, this one also has to be a mine. So we can then see this one's always a mine, regardless of what we do. Cool. I guess the next thing we can kind of notice is that in the red case here, which we might actually just get rid of these now that we're thinking in a case breakdown instead. In the red case here, first of all, this 3 then already has a non-mine, or a mine down here for 2, so that means this one can't be a mine. That tells us then that this 6 is going to be these 3 right here. So therefore this one is also not a mine. That finishes off this 4 as well, and this 5. So then we get a contradiction up here with the 3. So that tells us then that the yellow case is accurate. So there we go. That 5 is now finished. And what else can we glean from this? Not sure of anything yet. What we might... Well, no, this 2 is finished. There we go. That allows us to kind of wrap around here. We can then see this 3, since it only has 1 more uncolored cell around it, has to include this colored cell, and that just finishes it. This 4 is also now finished. This 6 now needs to just only have this one as its last cell, just because there are no longer enough uncolored cells. And that actually finishes the puzzle. So there we go. Alright. Next one we have, this one is the most complex, that's okay, we'll go and do one real quick, is multiple negation. The basic idea is this still works the same, where it's like these clues tell us the difference between colored and uncolored cells. The only difference now is that the colored cells are counting for 2, whereas the uncolored are counting for 1. So basically it just means that if, for example, in a clue of 0, we know that either there's nothing around this, or both of these and one of these, right? Because this could be basically thought of as like positive 2, minus 1, minus 1. That gets us to 0. So what it also tells us now is that we need exactly 2 mines in this region, so it's either going to be both of these or this one. Cool. We can once again see there is some parity argument here. For example, for this 2, we know that they can never involve this 1 because I'll always put it to an odd number, right? Because we're basically only able then to add or subtract even numbers of mines from it. So we know that this one is never going to be a mine. Cool. And now, given that one of these two must be a mine, I guess, I'm not sure that gives us a lot on its own yet. No, it doesn't really look like it. Okay. So I guess we could consider then is just each of the possibilities for this part of the two, right? One of them is that there's both of these, in which case we then know, first of all, that there has to be one more of these black 2s, right? So then we're at 0. That tells us then there has to be one here and one here. Also, I guess we could just mark in like one through this. There we go. Cool. Whereas the alternative, I guess, is this one in the middle, but I actually see something a bit stronger that we can look for. Let's think about what happens if this one's a mine, right? Then for the 0, we need both of these to be non-mines. And I just marked that one as, or both as to be mines. I marked this one's a non-mine because that would be too much for the 0. But then we can see this 0 is never actually going to be able to be actualized, so this one is never a mine. There we go. That seems like it might have been more what I should have been looking for. Cool. So I guess then one other thing we can kind of consider now is that if this one is a mine, then we also have to have 2 mines here, but as we can see, this is kind of going to break the 2, because we already established earlier that we can either only have this one as a mine or both of these. If we have some combination, it's no longer going to be able to be accurate. So that now tells us that the actual combination of mines must be that. Then for this 0, we once again need a mine there, which then fills in all of this. And this will also tell us that there has to be exactly one mine over here. But however, we can kind of consider that if this mine were here, then we know this one's not a mine, this one's not a mine. But now this 2 can never be satisfied, right? Because it's at 0 currently, it can only ever get pumped up to 1. So we know the mine has to be here with this exact combination. That one just isn't a mine for the 2's sake. Okay. And now we can also see the 6 is just finished. We don't want to include that mine because I'll put it back down to a 5. And we can then see here we currently have 3. That means we need 2 more, so it will be one of these 2. And we know this one's not going to be involved because I would push it back to only being an even number. So there we go. Same thing from there. That'll push it to being an even number. And now, given that we have one of these 2 mines here, and we can only get... we also know that we can't use both of these to counter it because that'll push it always to being an even number. So we can only ever use one of these to counter, right? Because I'll push it back down to 1. But if we then were to include either of these, that'll pump it up beyond 1. So we then know that this one is not going to... Rather, neither of those will be included. And, okay. I guess something else we can kind of consider is just, given that there will be one mine up here, we know for this 3 to stay odd, this one can't be a mine. Cool. Okay. So then that tells us there's going to be one mine through these 2, one mine through this. So basically, we're only allowed one gray mine around the 0. If that gray mine is up here, then neither of these are mines. But then this doesn't actually leave us enough room to get the 3 up to 3. It can only ever be 2 at maximum. So we know that this one can't be a mine. One of these 2 is a mine. So that tells us that one of these, which puts it down to 1. So that one has to be a mine. There we go. And that allows us to just kind of wrap up that stuff. And given now that we know there's one mine in this group, one mine in this group, one mine in this group, and 3 mines left, we know this one cannot be a mine. In order to finish off this one, we need to at least include this to put it to an odd number. So that tells us this one's not a mine. That's to finish off the 2. Then we know that's not mine because there's only one mine in that region. This finishes off the 3, and thus the puzzle. Nice. Alright, and now we only have one more, because I already covered unary wall in the last one, since it includes a unique variant. So the last one we have is negation crossed. This one's just negation and cross. It's fairly self-explanatory. Here we go. Okay. So I guess one thing we can see with this 3 is it's either going to be all 3 of these, and thus none of these, like such, or the inverse, where it's just all 3 of those. In this case, we can then see that this 1 has to just not have a mine there either. If it does, this pushes up to 2, which is too high. So we get that. Whereas in the case where all 3 of these are mines, and thus neither or none of those, we once again get that there can't be a mine here because this would put it down to 0 now, which is not going to be recoverable. So we know that this one's always a non-mine. Cool. So now in the red case, we can see that neither of these are mines, right? Because if either of them worked, this 2 would be too low. But that kind of runs into a problem with this 2, where it needed at least 2 of these uncolored mines to get up to 2 at all. Right, like I can't do that with the colored ones. So we then can see that yellow must be the accurate case. So we can fill in all of these. And this 2, yeah, this 2 only has these 2 to actually use, so there we go. This 2 is also finished now. And then we can also get that this 3 needs to just be like that to be finished. This 1's finished as well, as is this 3. And now this one, first of all, it needs this mine to at least be back down to 1, and if we put another mine here, it's permanently pushed up to at least 2, so this cannot be a mine. And for this 2 to be finished, we also need a mine up here to put it back down to 2. This 3 thus must have 1 mine there, no mine there. And then, okay. The next thing I guess we can kind of consider is that there are only 4 mines left. So if we were to, for example, put a mine here, for instance, I don't know if this one runs into any problems. We know then there must be a mine here. And yes, actually it does. Nope, never mind. Yeah. I forgot. Since we marked this one as a mine, we know that this one needs to have another mine somewhere to balance out these 2. That mine has to be up here, and that's the only way to balance them out. So there we are. This 2 is finished. This 2 is also finished. This one needs one more mine here. For the 0 now, we then need a mine here. And lastly, to finish off this 2, we already have 4 black mines, 1 uncolored mine, so then we need another uncolored mine there to put it to 2. There we go. That'll finish off the puzzle, and okay. Those are all of the unique combinations of the game. And with that, we have gone through more or less everything. I guess I don't know if we covered hashtag plus. I'll probably do it in the future during like one of my randomizer videos. I'll do some of that stuff. But basically, it's just here. I can just real quick look into. Have I done all these? No, I haven't. Okay. I could just look into one of these real quick. Basically, it's just hashtag, which is just basically all the clues can be any of these. But we've also attached a left side variance. So, for example, this one's horizontal hashtag. So, first of all, this cross clue is just finished. And then we know from this liar clue, this one's a 1 since there can't be 3 around it. And so then that tells us the 1 mine for this 1 is right there. We can fill in both of these as non-mines. And, okay. Something else that we can see from here for this 6 is that there can only ever be at most 2 mines down here, right? Like, the way we'd achieve that is through something like this or this. So what that then tells us is that we need at least 4 mines up here, and that tells us both of these are mines. We then know that's not a mine from the 1. This 1 cross clue is also finished, and now from horizontal we know there can be at most 1 mine down there. So there must be a mine up here, no horizontal neighbor. That finishes off this 1 cross clue, so there we go. Now for 4 multiple, this one can't be a mine just by parity, and okay, now we have a 1-1-1 wall. Given that we already know there's exactly 1 mine here and 1 mine here, that tells us there must be 1 mine here, and since we have 4 remaining mines, the last mine must be up here. That then puts us 6 to a 5 right now, so we need that to be our last mine, and okay. There we go. And we can erase that real quick, because then we know there has to be a mine down here for this group of 2. No horizontal neighbor by 1-1 wall and by horizontal, and there we are. So, yeah, that's what a hashtag plus puzzle looks like. I don't remember, we might have done one during the hashtag video, maybe not. I don't really recall, to be honest. It's been a bit since I recorded that, but yeah. With that, we've more or less covered everything. This is one other thing that I might do during later videos. These are just the hardest puzzles in the game. But, yes. So, I would like to thank everyone for kind of joining me throughout this series. Once again, huge thanks. I will definitely be doing something similar with the second game when it comes out in full. I don't think I'm making other videos on it beforehand, though, just because I've covered more or less everything in the demo, I think, pretty extensively. But yeah, once the game comes out properly, I will... I'm not sure if I'm going to do a thing where I do a dedicated video to each variant like I have here, or if I more do a thing where, like, I basically make a fresh save file and just kind of run through stuff on there. I'm not sure. I might do the former because I honestly think that this, like, serves as a good way to, like, just, I guess, give people an introduction to each variant and, like, how it kind of works in combination with others. But I'm not sure. We still realistically have a while until that game comes out, so I have time to think about it. But yeah. Thank you so much for watching. I will catch you in the next one. Peace.